Hey y'all, it's Mary Hyatt, and I'm so excited you're here for this month's topic, which is all about aligned routine. If you are somebody who shudders at the thought of routine, discipline, or consistency and find yourself self-sabotaging the things you really want, this month is for you. We are going to be talking about what it looks like to take action from a place of true soul alignment. I know that by the end of the month, you're going to be in total flow. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Welcome to the Living Fully Alive podcast with Mary Hyatt, here to help you find your authentic voice, learn how to love yourself, and embrace your life. And now, your host, life and mindset coach, body love advocate, and doTERRA Presidential Diamond, Mary Hyatt.
Hey everybody, it is Mary, and I am so excited about today's episode because this is the first and kind of foundational episode in this new month's topic all around aligned routine. And I know that's kind of like a made up term. I feel like I made that up. And I am going to explain exactly what it is and walk you through, because if you are like me or like a lot of the people that I coach one-on-one and the people inside of my Fully Alive Circle membership, we kind of have a visceral reaction to routine. So hang with me. If you are one of those people, I think you're going to feel a lot of relief after today's episode. But if you have been hanging out with me on the podcast here for a little while, you know that last month we talked about manifestation, which was just an amazing topic. A lot of breakthroughs happened. It's probably one of my favorite things to talk about. And even last week on the episode where I talked about kind of becoming your future self, we looked at what does it mean to take aligned action, where you are actively taking responsibility for co-creating your future life. And I walked through that process of what it looks like to step into action, to really own the part of your let's just say accountability for your part in creating your future. But I know that sometimes, if not a lot of the time, we meet resistance with that. It's like we come out with great intentions. We want to maybe shift the way that we're moving our bodies. We want to feel more in shape. We want to feel more vibrant in our bodies. Maybe we want to be more successful in our business. And part of that requires new action. Part of that requires creating new habits, new disciplines, different ways of being so that we can create a new result in our lives. You know, different actions create different results. But there's sort of this like where the rubber meets the road. And I have found in my own life that oftentimes I end up rebelling against myself. Why do we do that? Like, this is one of those phenomenons that I'm like, okay, we're not children anymore. Nobody's like actually telling us, quote unquote, telling us what we need to do. And yet there's this thing we like to play with, which is self-sabotage, where we come up against our own internal resistance and we sabotage the things that we know we need to be doing in order to create the life that we want. And it's just this like, yucky feeling where we kind of like stick up our middle finger to life, to what we need to be doing. And therefore we kind of end up in that same-o, Groundhog's Day sort of looping, creating the same thing over and over again. So I thought when we're talking about aligned routine, first we got to understand that when we find ourselves in this place of resistance, in the place of shoulds or have tos, and we just sort of are over having a routine, we need to take a deep look at this negative association that we have with productivity, with routine, with discipline, with consistency. And I want to kind of like start by saying, this has so been me in my life. I remember this was years ago. I was reading a lot of like self-development books and success principles kind of books as I was building my doTERRA network marketing business. And I was sort of learning like, okay, what does it look like to be a successful entrepreneur? And everything that I kept reading was about morning routine, having a morning routine. And as a concept, I was like, great, this makes total sense. Yes, like I need to carve out time and space for having a consistent routine where I am meditating every morning, I'm moving my body often, maybe I'm journaling or reading a book or listening to a podcast or something like that that is consistent. It is consistent for my growth. It is consistent for my development. And so I would even like mark on my calendar. I remember like getting out a giant whiteboard and kind of marking out my days. Okay, here's what it's going to look like. Here's what Tuesday's going to look like, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all the way through the weekend. And I started to map out my calendar that included my routine. So I had my morning routine. I had sort of my daily operations that I went through after that. I had my afternoons mapped out, even like to the point of, okay, during, 1 and 3, you're going to take a nap on Tuesday and Wednesday and Friday. And this day is going to be your day off. This day is going to be a client meeting day. This is going to be a sales day. This is going to be a whatever. So I mapped this all out and I felt like really excited about it. I was like, all right, great. We got a plan. We're going to make this happen. And it wasn't too far into that process that I found myself like in total rebellion. Like even when I got to the time of the day that it was like my nap time, I was like, I'm not taking a nap. I'm not going to do what you told me to do. And I'm like, Mary, sweet Mary, like you put that on your own calendar. Why are you rebelling against your own self-care? Like you put it on the calendar. You did it. Nobody told you to do it. And yet I was rebelling. And then when it came to my morning routine, oh my God, it was like every morning, even though I had like created the space, I had woken up, I had the agenda and the intention to meditate, to do whatever, I didn't do it. I totally rebelled and was in this point and season of my journey where, again, I sort of had that middle finger up to my own routine. So I had to do some little soul digging, some shadow work to figure out what was coming up here. And I don't know if you guys can relate because I've heard this from a lot of my clients that this is similar. Now, you might have a personality that loves routine. Like there are a few people out there that just like thrive on it. I have a dear friend and he is like, I don't know if this is like a male thing or if this is a personality thing or if this is an Enneagram type thing or whatever it is, process work. But man, he literally wakes up and does the same thing every morning, wakes up at 5 a.m., goes to the gym, comes back, does prayer, meditation, journaling, listening to something inspirational, and then gets on with his day. So by the time it's 8 a.m., he is like fueled and ready to go. And you see this a lot with entrepreneurs where they really preach this idea of a morning routine. Now, I'm not saying that is bad by any means. However, it just doesn't honestly work for me. However, like I got to figure out, okay, well, what does work for me? Because I do believe that routine is important. But here's where I see the breakdown happen. The first breakdown is, number one, when we're creating our routines, we end up being in a place of comparison. We end up sort of looking at what all of our quote unquote successful peers are doing. At least this is the case for me, where I look at my dad, for instance. I look at my mom and they have this beautiful morning routine. They get up, they pray together, they have their own sort of like separate time of prayer and meditation, and they utilize this morning in a really beautiful way. And I've always compared myself to my parents, like, oh, this is what it looks like to be healthy, right? This is what it looks like to have a good setup for the day. Or I compare myself to like the friend I was telling you about. Or I look on social media and I see how everybody else is starting their day. Or I look at people who are, or I should say, have read things about people who have done time blocking and have a really like tight kind of schedule that's based on routine. And of course, for me, like what that does is it totally shuts me down. And I feel like a complete whopping failure because I'm not doing that thing. And so if for you, if you're looking at other people on social media, the books that you read about success, your friends, if you are looking at that and going, oh, comparing and measuring yourself against that and feeling like a total failure, well, let's just hold on for a second, because the truth is routine might not be a natural thing for you. Like, it may be something to do with your personality. Like, for example, one of the things that I have realized as being more of an artist type personality is that I need a lot of variety in my schedule and a lot of flexibility and the ability to choose in the moment what it is that I need, like to tap in and ask myself, like, okay, what is it that I need? What is asking for my highest attention? Or you might have come from a family that never had routine. And so routine is foreign to you. Like, there are a lot of family dynamics, and you might relate to this, that were based on chaos, uncertainty, based on sort of like this crisis sort of mentality, that whatever was screaming the loudest, whatever was happening that was full of drama, that is what got the attention of the day. That is what required attention. And so routine, like planning ahead, executing ahead of time, sort of making the intention, wasn't maybe something that you observed. And so you never even like learned how to do routine. And so I think it's important for us to understand, like, based on either our inherent kind of way that we work or our family dynamic, routine may be something that feels like a stretch or feels exhausting. So we have, number one, we have the comparison piece going on, but then two, it may just not be natural or learned for us. Because the truth is that when we look at how anybody else is living their life, that person's routine is probably not going to work for our lives. Now, I'm all for sort of looking at how people do other things and kind of taking the parts of that work and applying it to my own life. Like, some of that is helpful. You know, some of the times when I read something in a book, it's like, oh my God, I'd never even thought about that before. This is brilliant. I'm going to try that. I'm going to work on that and see if it matches. But the truth is oftentimes what somebody else is doing isn't going to match our life. Like, it's not going to feel good for us. Like, if I try to mimic what my friend does, getting up at 5 a.m., having like the quote unquote miracle morning, doing all these things before 8 a.m., like, for me, that sounds like a recipe of taking all my freedom away and imprisonment. And I know that's a huge part of my personality. So again, like, that might feel like freedom to you, but for me, that feels like imprisonment. And so each of us is going to have to identify what works for us. Otherwise, it's going to lead us to burnout. And we're so used to this. Like, we're so used to looking at other people to tell us how to eat. Like, we look on social media, we look on Instagram or Facebook, and we go, okay, well, what are they eating? What diet are they doing? What workout plan are they doing? You know, we look to other people to tell us how to exercise. We look at other people how to tell us how to run our businesses. And what happens is that when all we're doing is sort of almost like keeping up with the Joneses, keeping up with how other people are doing it, then that's where that self-sabotage comes in. Because the truth is that adults don't like to be told what to do. Part of being an adult is having the ability to make our own choices and make our own decisions. So when we feel like somebody is telling us what to do, like an authority figure or almost like this like school teacher kind of thing, when we feel like we're being told what to do and there's a way in which we can be good or bad, we can succeed or fail based on like following the rules and making sure we're checking off all the right boxes. The reality is we end up just quitting. Like, it doesn't actually work for us. And that is where I want to just give you like a giant permission slip to figure out what routine looks like for you. Figure out what works for your life. And this is where that concept for this month's topic of aligned routine comes into place. Aligning your routine with your own self and not up against other people. So I want to start off by defining what is aligned routine. And to me, aligned routine is going to be informed by 4 different connection. So I want to walk you through each of these 4 different connections to help you understand, okay, this is what it looks like to create a routine from a place of joy, from a place of connection, from a place of authenticity. But before we kind of get into the ins and outs of those 4 connections, I want to define connection, because we're going to be talking about four different types of connection. Let's look at the word connection, and I'm actually not going to define it. I'm going to have my good old friend Brene Brown define it for us. Wouldn't it be so cool if right now I was like, and here's Brene, and then she came in to this podcast and like spoke to us. Hello, dream life. Okay, no, I'm stealing this from a book, Daring Greatly. Okay, so I'm going to read from her book. I wish, God, that would be so cool. Hey, one day, because I'm going to manifest that. I'm going to put that on my manifestation list. All right, Brene. So she says that connection equals the energy that is created between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment. Isn't that so good? Hey y'all, I'm sure you've been hearing me mention my Fully Alive Circle membership, and you might be wondering what it is and how you can join. So let me tell you a little bit about it. So the Circle membership is a safe place for women to gather together in a heart-centered community to take this deep dive into personal transformation. So it's my online membership where you'll learn how to find yourself again through daily devotional practices. Inside of our private Facebook group, I share resources like guided meditations, yoga practices, essential oil recipes, journal prompts, and so much more that dive into our monthly topic that we explore right here on the Living Fully Alive podcast. And all those resources are delivered to your inbox weekly to help you create powerful change in your life. So if you're looking for an affordable way to continue your journey of living fully alive, then definitely check out the Fully Alive Circle membership. Just go to maryhyatt.com/circle and you can find out all the details and join. All right, now back to this week's episode. I'm going to read that again. Connection equals the energy that is created between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment. That is connection. And why this definition matters is because it's about authenticity. So to be able to experience true connection, we have to be our truest selves. So when our aligned routine is informed by following 4 connections, it's showing up in alignment with our authentic self, like where we are honest, like radically honest about what we value, what we care about, what's important, who we really are. It's laying down that comparison of trying to hustle and keep up with everybody else's life and being totally dialed in to who we are and what we care about and what we value, our truest self. Because only then, when we are that true self, that authentic, imperfectly perfect self, then we can have true belonging. Belonging to ourselves, belonging to our life. Y'all, belonging to our life. Think about what that would look like and feel like and mean. Belonging to our world, belonging to all the people in it, that's true connection. And when we're that connected and when we feel like our life belongs to us, like we are showing up as our truest, most authentic selves, that is informing everything else, then from that connection, our habits, our behaviors, our routine is aligned. We're not trying to just like fit in and please and prove our worthiness and our enoughness. It's like, oh, no. Like my day-to-day life, my operations, who I am in the world is coming out of flow. Like it is like this beautiful, like I think of a circle, like this circular connection, like who I am internally flows out to who I am externally, like internal to external. It's aligned. It is totally in alignment with my truest and highest self, where I feel seen and heard and valued, where there's no judgment of I have to keep up with, I have to have these shoulds. I've got to make sure I tick off this box. If I don't have this routine, if I don't have this kind of discipline, then I won't ever be able to be successful. It's like, no. Hang on a second. I'm tapped in here. I'm connected here. So let's talk about the 4 different connections that are going to inform this aligned routine. So the first connection is to be connected to source. So when I'm designing my day, when I am trying to decide, okay, what's important for me today? What do I need to be focusing on? What is it that I want to give my attention to? I've got to be informed first by my connection to source. And when I say source, I mean source energy, I mean the universe, I mean God, I mean your higher power, whatever that looks like as a form of something that is bigger and greater than you, that is going to almost give you like a divine download. We've got to be connected to source first. In order for everything to flow out of our lives, I truly believe the most important thing that we can do is to go up. And vulnerably ask for guidance and assistance. Ask for a sign. Ask for God, higher source, higher power, whatever, to mirror to us and remind us who we truly are. Because if I am out there in the world just acting from a place of hustle, where I don't have any boundaries, where I'm trying to do all these things to be right, to be good enough, to be valued enough, to prove my worthiness, to prove my enoughness, it's like, oh, wait a second. I'm not being informed and connected to source here. I'm using all of my humanness, all of my ego to create my routine. These are my shoulds. These are the things that I have to do in order to be successful. This is what so-and-so said. This is what, it said in this book. But when we're connected to source, we are going up. We are going straight to the source to get our information. We are going straight to our higher power to receive the download. And it's inspired. When we create our routine informed by the messages that we're getting from source, that is when we're in total alignment. Because sometimes there's things that we set up, or things that we think we're supposed to be pushing towards, or things that we're trying to create that really aren't aligned with our purpose, with who we are created to be, with what we're meant to be doing in this time and space. I'll give you a great example. So one of the things that I've been experimenting with in my business has been, and this is based on a lot of my friends who know me well, who have been speaking into my life to say that Mary, you need to be doing more business coaching. You're so good at talking about business structures, leadership, all of that. You need to kind of almost switch your whole brand to talk about how to build businesses. And so I was like, okay, you're right. This is a gift of mine. I've already built a multi-6-figure business. Looking at creating $1 million a year, great, let's do this. I know how to do business. I do business well. So through that, I had this photo shoot. I had this kind of rebranding of, okay, Mary is boss babe, right? What does it look like to be in this place of power and teaching people about businesses? I started a business mastermind this year with several women, and every quarter we get together for a full day intensive and we talk about, okay, how do you scale and create this amazing, successful business? And so what happened is that I forgot to go to source. I forgot to check in to see, is this meant to be what I'm doing? And I had recently the most amazing download for myself when I sat down in meditation and I connected to source, I connected to God, and I realized, oh my gosh, this is not why I am here. This is not what I am meant to be doing. And y'all, from a logistical standpoint, if you were to look at my life and look at what I've been successful at, it would be a no-brainer. All the people that have told me this, it's oh, duh, of course, yes, do that. But when I slowed down and connected to source, the message that I received, in fact, I actually got it again today in meditation this morning, was, no, Mary, you are meant to help women who are stuck in this place of hustling and trying to prove themselves and doing all that they can do from a place of effort and will and ego to come back to source energy, to come back to their lovability, to come back to their enoughness, to come back to flow, to come back to their femininity, desire, passion, pleasure, emotions. And in that moment that I heard that message from God, it was like, yes. Now, does that make sense, quote unquote, from the outside looking in? I mean, maybe, but like, to me, it's like, okay, this is a message that I could have only received when I went up, that maybe I wasn't going to get from my friends or my family. But it was like, Mary, this is your purpose. This is your calling. This is your destiny. This is your purpose. And I know that from that place, it's going to be easy. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to be in flow. I'm going to be in alignment. So my routine shifts from doing this action and building this business around something that I think that I should be doing, because on paper it makes sense, to, oh no, now I am formed by this connection to source that reminds me of who I really am. That's why it's so important. Number one, if we're going to have a routine that feels like in total alignment, we've got to connect to source. That's the first connection. We've got to go up. Now, the second connection is that this is where we have to connect to our higher self. So first, higher power, source. Second, higher self. What do I mean by that? This is where our higher self is like the part of ourselves that doesn't hold the ego. Like, this is the soul. This is the soul level. This is our truest essence. This is the part of ourselves that like can see all things, that has this beautiful intuition and wisdom about her, that when we connect to our higher self, again, it's like we hear those messages on a gut level. So we move out of this place of ego and this place of sort of like getting trapped in the routine, getting trapped in the shoulds, getting trapped in the hustle and bustle of life, and sort of like going through the motions. When we can pause and connect to our higher self, it's like, whoa, that's when we get those downloads and those messages and those reminders of who we truly are. Like, if I didn't have to prove myself, if I didn't have to come from a place of ego, but I came from the soul place, where this is again kind of goes back to that definition of connection, of my most authentic self. The part of me that like this has been present in me forever. Like the part of me, for example, that is like so dialed in, like when I get quiet and like, for example, when I'm in my one-on-one coaching sessions and I get out of my own way and I connect to my higher self, it's like I go 10,000 feet above my body. I have new perspective. I can see things that I can't see with my ego eyes, my human eyes. But when I go to the soul level, when I'm sort of hovering and floating above my body and I look down, it's like, oh, that's the answer. That makes so much sense. And this is what I love to do as a coach. It's what I do for my clients. It's like I get to help them tap into their higher selves. It's like you already know the answer. As Tony Robbins would say, everything you need is within you now. Everything you need is within you now. You already have the answers. And so often we want to go outside of ourselves. Well, again, this person's successful. What are they doing? Let me do what they're doing. This person is operating their business in this way or operating their life in this way. Oh, well, let me try that. Versus tapping into our higher self and asking for those answers. We have it already within us. The whole purpose of coaching for me is to point people back to their own wisdom. We do this for checking into our body's wisdom. Our body always knows what we need to heal, to feel better, to thrive, to be vibrant. Our bodies know. Our hearts know. Our hearts know what we need, how to nourish ourselves emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. We know what we need. We know what needs to be the focus, to be sort of that point of where do I need to give my attention, what needs to be focused on. We know that when we tap into our higher self. So that's sort of the second connection, if we're going to create an aligned routine, we got to check in and connect to our higher self. Now, the third connection is that we've got to be connected to this season of life. And this is a little bit more of the practical side of things. So when I look at my life, and we're looking at, if you're listening to this in real time, year 2020. And this year has not gone as planned, okay? So this season of life is going to be different than any other season that we've dealt with before. So our routine, if we're going to have a aligned routine, it can't be just trying to hold up this perfectionist definition of routine for the sake of doing it because it's always worked, or it's the perfect structure. We've got to have it be informed by this season of life. So for example, I was working with a one-on-one client yesterday, and last week, her mother passed very suddenly, was diagnosed with cancer, and they didn't know how much time she had left, and ended up dying within about 2 weeks of being diagnosed. Much, much, much sooner than the whole family anticipated. They were not prepared for it to go that quickly. Devastating. You know what I mean? Just heartbreaking to lose your mother. And then the hardest part was the mother was in the hospital alone because of COVID. So just so many areas of trauma and heartbreak and grief. And then in addition to that, so my client, the week of her mother's funeral, ends up having to go in to get emergency surgery for appendicitis. Y'all, you can't make it up. Okay. She has to go in for emergency surgery totally alone. Again, can't have her husband with her, can't have anybody with her because of COVID. So she's in the hospital alone, goes into surgery, emergency surgery, same day kind of situation. And then she gets home. 2 days later is her mother's funeral. So I was speaking with her yesterday in our one-on-one session, and we're talking about what it looks like. She owns her own business, very successful business, and she's feeling all this pressure to get back to her business. And she had this old routine that worked for her. She got up at a certain time of day. She did X, Y, Z. She, worked a whole lot and thus had a very successful business. And so what we had to realize through our conversation together, through this coaching session, it was oh, you literally cannot be doing the same things you used to be doing. You're in recovery. You're in emotional recovery because of your mother's passing. You're in physical recovery because of your surgery, not to mention just spiritual, mental, all of it together, not to mention a global pandemic and all the things that go along with that. So it was this season of life is going to require a lot more rest. This season of life is going to require that self-care more than ever is top priority. This season of life means slowing down for the next several weeks. And so the routine is going to have to change based on the season of life. So for you, whether it's your kids are back in school, or maybe they're at home because it's all virtual now, maybe your work is now from home versus going into an office, depending on life circumstances, no matter what season we're in, our routine has to adjust to that. So we've got to be connected to our season of life and not feel like we're failing because we're not doing what we used to be doing, or that it doesn't look the same, or we don't have the bandwidth emotionally right now to do what we used to be able to do. So it's got to be connected to our season of life. And then our fourth connection that's going to inform this aligned routine, we've got to be connected to our emotions. We want our routine to feel good, y'all. And so often it doesn't. It just feels like punishment. It feels again, the school teacher is telling us what we have to do. Now, let me just say this because I think this is important. Feeling good is different than it being easy. Okay? I want to make this really clear because sometimes our aligned routine is a spiritual discipline. Now, believe me when I say that I don't necessarily want to meditate every day. I don't always want to move my body regularly. Right now I'm in a season where going to the gym is getting out the door and doing that is a real choice and decision. based out of like, I know this is going to be better for myself in the long run versus in the moment wanting to do it. Like there have been seasons where I'm like, yes, like I can't wait to move my body. I can't wait to do yoga. That's not happening right now, y'all. Okay. I'm here to tell you, like, I'm just like, oh, here we go again. But here's what I'm having to do. Like I'm having to find ways to associate doing hard things with elevated positive emotions. I've got to reprogram the way that I think about it. So for you, as you think about this aligned routine, sometimes it's going to include things that aren't in your desire, passionate, ecstatic zone. Sometimes it's like, this is like a legit spiritual discipline. And we'll talk about that later in this month. But when it's aligned, you can like rest assured that it is something that you're doing for your highest good. It's going to move you to a place where you are going to feel better in your future, even if it's not in that exact moment. Like meditation sometimes doesn't feel good in the moment, but I know that it's going to affect my day later on. Being at the gym oftentimes doesn't feel good in the moment, but it's going to give me energy throughout the day. And very often you might have to find yourself saying things like, I can do hard things. I can do hard things. And what I have learned over time, and this is really powerful and helpful, is that growth equals happiness. Let that just sink in for a second. Growth equals happiness. So when I am in alignment, I know that it's best. It's like the best of me. It's creating a version of myself that is going to bring me joy, freedom, fulfillment, energy. So I can slow down and create a new association with the behavior and how I'm feeling about it. Because when we are in a aligned routine, even when it feels like we're having to choose it, there's a purpose to it. And you can attach joy to that purpose, happiness to it, gratitude to it with this new aligned routine, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it feels challenging. It's like, how can you attach a positive, elevated emotion to it? So when you think about it or when you talk about it, you can say things like, I get to do my meditation today versus I have to do my meditation today. Now I'm going to have to like talk myself through that resistance. But when you can create this space to feel grateful for meditating because you know it is helping you to become your future self, it changes the game. Like seeing it as you are walking into your best life and that it's getting easier every day. Like it's a total mental game. But the more that I can associate feeling good as I'm leaning into my aligned routine, the more I'm going to want to do it and the more I'm going to be drawn into it. So it's all about how we're interpreting this new behavior, this new habit, this new action. It's all about the meaning that I'm giving it. By interpreting it in a way that is empowering versus disempowering, interpreting it in a way where it's going, oh, growth equals happiness. All of a sudden, something that I haven't enjoyed before, now I can associate with something that feels good. So we've got to connect this positive, elevated emotion to our routine. And so if we look at, okay, when I create my routine, I want to make sure that it's connected to source. We've got to go up first. I want to make sure that I'm connected to my higher self, connected to the season of life, and then connected to these positive, elevated emotions. Then I can create a routine that brings me joy, that doesn't exhaust me. It's not going to burn me out because it's in alignment. Like if you think about a spine, like a actual, human spine, when you're in alignment, that feels good. Like, I don't know how many of you guys go to a chiropractor, but like, let's say you have a disc out of place or you have something that is out of alignment, it causes suffering and pain. It doesn't feel good. It hurts. And so to me, when we have a routine that's out of alignment with source, with our higher self, with our season of life, and gives us and generates a negative emotion, that's going to suck, like plain and simple. It's not going to feel good. It's going to cause resistance, pain, suffering. And we're going to self-sabotage. We're going to rebel against it because it's not in alignment. That is like not connected to our truest, highest self. So when we're in alignment, when our routine is in alignment, whoa, all of a sudden it feels good. It feels easier. It feels like something that we want to do and participate in. And I know that for me, part of my aligned routine means that every day it's kind of changing. If I'm going and like directly connecting to source first in my morning, then it's going to shift and change my day. Now, don't get me wrong. There are certain things that I have in my calendar that are kind of like staples or non-negotiables, but most of my day is getting informed first by source and by higher self. What is asking for my highest attention right now? Where do I need to give my energy? Who do I need to serve? I want to be enlightened. I want to be connected to my intuition and to my wisdom. Like if I'm just going through the motions without connecting and checking in, I could be like doing things that seem good or that feel productive, checking things off that are like an achievement. But if it's not informed, it's like I'm wasting my time. And it's probably going to feel a lot like effort, a lot like hustle, a lot like eventually exhaustion. But when I'm informed, and again, that's why every day for me is different. Every day for me has some variety in it. It's like, oh, it's inspired action. It's inspired. And to me, that is when we enter into the flow of life. That's when things come to us that we could have never created in the first place. That's when opportunities show up that we didn't orchestrate or design. That's when we are like led to places. That's when we are inspired to be creative. That's when we're in the flow of life. And from that flow of life brings abundance, fulfillment, and joy. So I'm just thrilled to continue this conversation over the next several episodes. So I hope that this was foundational. I hope this gave you, again, a giant permission slip to stop doing what everybody else is doing and to do it your way, connected to source, to yourself, to your season of life, to your emotions. Didn't that feel better? Yes, yes, yes. All right, y'all. I will see you next week. It's going to be a goodie. All right, y'all. Just remember that the purpose of life is to be grateful, to be great, and to be full. I'll speak with y'all next week. Bye. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you got some amazing nuggets to take home and start implementing into your life. And if you're looking for the show notes and links, head on over to maryhyatt.com/show. And if you loved it, why not bring your girlfriends along this journey of becoming fully alive with you? Just give a quick share of this episode to your social channels and enjoy those debriefing convos with your besties. Thanks again, and I can't wait to connect with you next week.